So Roshana.
Awesome. Great to be here.
Yes. Tell us about you. Who are you, Roshana?
Who am I? So I joined Toyota about almost 3 months ago now.
Oh, wow.
Brand new to automotive. And actually the other key thing that's different at the moment is it's the first time I've had a black boss. Yeah, and that says it all. And
Yes.
You've talked about him, so Frank is awesome. And actually the people that Frank has around him as well, men included, are really fantastic and have real vision and true commitment to diversity, which is probably why they hired me and why I feel so comfortable having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's talk about it. We know Toyota, but what about Toyota Connected? What's the difference?
It's new.
Okay.
So obviously Toyota itself is a huge organization, been around for a very long time. Toyota Connected is a new subsidiary, 3 years old now, and its purpose is to unlock the potential of the data we get from the cars. So connected technologies is what we call that.
Yeah.
So it's a brand new organization, and the thing that really stands out about it is, as a new organization, when it was designed to kind of optimize for the world we live in many ways, one of which is talent. So very, very conscious focus on what looks good in terms of the people we hire and the importance of cognitive diversity.
Yes.
And that's our starting point. So rather than diversity as a kind of blanket term, the idea is how do we bring cognitive diversity? And fundamentally, within Toyota, that's about our values, about ensuring that our people think first about the content and capability that somebody brings, as opposed to anything else. And then the intention and hope is that the rest follows.
Yes. I mean, Toyota is a great company that a lot of people would love to work for. So tell us, what's the secret to get into Toyota?
Oh, well, you know Frank.
I'm happy where I work. I love what I'm doing. But for anybody who's listening to this fireside chat and say, I would love to work for Toyota and I love what you're trying to create and your vision,
Absolutely.
what advice would you give them?
Look on LinkedIn. There are actually heaps of open roles at the moment. Do apply for one if you see one that ticks all the boxes. But if not, actually, look me up on LinkedIn. More than happy to have conversations with anybody. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting you talk about ticking over boxes, because quite often women would not apply if they think that they don't meet the criteria, or men would just go, 30%, that's enough. Let me just put myself forward.
Yeah.
And that's something. What advice would you say to women to learn about moving through their career and progressing? What advice would you give them?
So I think that behavior comes from a lack of confidence, and I think that lack of confidence honestly comes from years of cultural norms around how women, and particularly women of color, should behave. So I think we have a tendency to want to be perfect, want to know all the facts, want to be absolutely ready for something before we raise our hand.
Yeah.
And I would encourage us to be a little bit more confident and to be a little bit more liberal in our approach there. So if you feel that you have the capability, if you feel that you have maybe 50% of the experience that's listed out, go for it. The worst that can happen is that you can be told no. If you get told no, I think always ask why. So get the feedback, understand. And actually, if I'm honest, in my experience, that can be a bit painful sometimes, because sometimes the feedback you get will help you understand which skills you need to develop. In other situations, very honestly, it points to bias.
Yes.
And you know that, right? I mean, you know when somebody is just not viewing you completely because of their biases. And sadly, that is, I think, the world we navigate, and probably black women more than brown women, but still on that same spectrum.
Yeah, I think that has become, as you said, talking about norm, to always be underestimated and having to work twice as hard to be able to see it, for our actual value, which is, so interesting. And when I think about, technology companies, as you say, they're not doing enough when it comes to diversity and inclusion. What can tech companies can learn from Toyota when it comes to your strategy or your actions towards that?
So I think some of the other speakers spoke about, making sure you're recruiting from the right pools and being very conscious in that recruitment effort. And I absolutely agree with that, and Toyota does a lot around that. But I think it's beyond just the recruitment. It's about mindset. It's about how you view talent. Are you listening to what somebody's saying and what they're bringing? Or are you viewing somebody through a lens? So I think that mindset is very important, that it is important to create an environment where people feel able to challenge themselves and others on their unconscious biases.
Yeah.
And I think if you manage to do that and do all the other sort of more administrative things, like look in the right pools, make sure you have transparent career progression frameworks and so on, if you do both together, then you'll find you do achieve a much more diverse outcome.
Absolutely, and I cannot agree more. I keep saying diversity is not an act of kindness, it's good business. And we know that companies who are diverse from the top are always performing much better than the ones who are not. And thinking about this book, you know, I wrote this book because I wish I could go back in time and read this. What do you think is important for Toyota to get involved in something like that?
To show what's possible. I mean, you mentioned it previously. I think, you know, there's the saying, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I don't think that's entirely true. Women like yourself demonstrate that it's not true, and as do all the women in this book. So it's not entirely true, but I think it certainly does help people to have role models. It helps individuals to have role models, and I think it helps organizational culture as well to have diversity, so that, for example, you're not the only black woman in the room. So they're used to black women in the room, and therefore when you get a new black woman entering the room, that black woman is just seen as one of many, and there's a kind of comfort factor. I mean, you talked earlier about the last speaker being the only white man in the room, and we're used to that on a day-to-day basis, and with that comes, with your sort of difference factor, there are many advantages in as much as people in an organization tend to always know who I am, because I'm the only one. But also people can perceive you in particular ways and not be as open-minded to your content, because they're used to content being delivered in the way that the majority delivers it.
Yes, and it's about that, you know, and embracing the change and being the driver and using your power to actually also make an impact towards that thinking. And this it's interesting that a lot of stereotypes have, you know, a lot of unconscious biases are rooted within stereotypes, and that's so important that you say if we are the only one in the room, you are meant to be here so we can change the game for everybody, all the brown women, all the black women who don't see this. I'm going to ask you a last question directly to you, not Toyota, but very much about you. Like, if you think about your legacy, how do you want to be remembered?
I guess as somebody who in hopefully successive roles has helped to create a culture that has enabled both the majority and the minority to thrive. So enable people to focus on content rather than stereotype or personal expectation, so that you can actually benefit from cognitive diversity, and also so that by experiencing that, others go on and continue to kind of spread that way of working in roles that they continue to take on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.